Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that sits right at the intersection of faith, mystery, and maybe even a little bit of fear. It's the tale of a small, quiet town, a centuries-old church, and an event so strange it left the community divided and searching for answers. This is the story of the cross that turned on its own. Our story takes place in the peaceful village of Oakhaven, a place where time seems to slow down, and traditions are held dear. At the heart of Oakhaven stands St. Jude's Church, a beautiful stone building that has been the center of community life for over 200 years. Inside, hanging high above the chancel arch, is a large hand-carved wooden cross. It's not ornate or gilded, but its simple, dark wood has absorbed the prayers, hopes, and sorrows of generations. For as long as anyone could remember, this cross faced the altar, a symbol of devotion directed towards the sacred space. Until one Tuesday morning, when everything changed. It was Mrs. Gable, the church organist and a woman of unshakable routine, who made the discovery. She arrived at precisely 8 a.m. to practice for the upcoming Sunday service, just as she had for the past 40 years. She unlocked the heavy oak doors, the familiar scent of old wood and beeswax greeting her. She switched on the lights, and as the nave was bathed in a soft glow, her eyes were drawn upwards. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her music sheets slipped from her hand, scattering across the stone floor. The cross had moved. It had rotated a full 180 degrees on its heavy iron chain. Instead of facing the altar, it was now looking out, directly at the pews, at the empty space where the congregation would sit. Mrs. Gable, a practical woman not given to flights of fancy, first assumed it was a prank. Teenagers, perhaps, with too much time on their hands. She immediately called Father Michael, the parish priest. He arrived within minutes, his expression a mixture of concern and disbelief. Together, they examined the cross. It was suspended from a thick, rusted chain attached to a heavy wooden beam in the ceiling, at least 20 feet high. There was no ladder nearby, no scuff marks on the floor, no sign of forced entry. The dust on the beam above was thick and undisturbed. How could anyone have moved it? And more importantly, why? Word of the turned cross spread through Oakhaven like wildfire. By noon, a small crowd had gathered outside St. Jude's. Father Michael, trying to maintain a sense of calm, allowed people to come inside and see for themselves. The reactions were as varied as the townspeople themselves. Some whispered, their eyes wide with awe. Others scoffed, convinced there was a logical explanation. The community, once united by their shared faith and history, was now split into two distinct camps. The first group saw the event as a miracle, a divine sign of protection. Old Man Hemlock, a farmer whose family had lived in the valley for generations, was one of the most vocal proponents of this view. He stood in the aisle, his weathered face looking up at the cross, and declared it a blessing. He believed the cross had turned to face the people, to watch over them, to shield the congregation from some unseen danger. It was a gesture of divine guardianship, a reassurance that they were not alone. This idea brought comfort to many, especially the elderly who felt a deep, personal connection to the church. They saw it as a sign that their faith was being rewarded, that their little town was being specially looked after. But there was another, more ominous interpretation. This second group believed the cross had turned not as a shield, but as a warning. They argued that the cross turning its back on the altar, the most sacred part of the church, was a sign of God's displeasure. Sarah, a young mother who ran the local bakery, voiced the fears of many. She wondered if the town had strayed, if its people had become complacent in their faith. Was this a call to repentance? A sign that something terrible was on the horizon if they didn't change their ways? This interpretation cast a shadow of anxiety over the village. People started looking at their neighbors differently, wondering what sins the community was being judged for. The cross was no longer a symbol of comfort, but a silent accuser. As the days turned into weeks, the mystery only deepened. Father Michael, caught between the two factions, tried to be a voice of reason. He organized a town meeting in the church hall, hoping an open discussion would ease the tension. But the meeting only highlighted the divide. People who had been lifelong friends argued passionately, each convinced their interpretation was the correct one. The miracle camp accused the warning camp of fear-mongering, while the warning camp accused the miracle camp of willful ignorance. Engineers and experts were called in. A structural engineer from the city came to inspect the cross and its mountings. He spent a full day examining the beam, the chain, and the hook. His official report concluded that while the chain was old, it was structurally sound. He could find no mechanical reason for the cross to have rotated. Spontaneous rotation of an object of this weight and suspension is, from an engineering perspective, impossible, he wrote. He suggested a subtle, external force, but couldn't guess what it might be. This professional opinion only added fuel to the fire. For the believers, impossible meant miraculous. For the skeptics, it just meant the real cause hadn't been found yet. A local historian, a man named Arthur Finch, offered a different perspective. He spent days poring over the church's ancient records in the town archive. He discovered a faded entry in a journal from the late 1700s, written by the church's first vicar. The entry described a great and unsettling wind that had swept through the valley, causing the church bell to ring on its own and the sacred cross to turn and face its flock. The vicar at the time had interpreted it as a sign to prepare for a harsh winter. And indeed, that year was followed by one of the most severe winters on record. This historical precedent gave weight to the warning theory, and a new wave of unease settled over Oakhaven as autumn approached. The mystery of the turned cross became a part of Oakhaven's identity. Tourists began to visit, not for the village's quaint charm, but to see the miracle cross of St. Jude's. The town was featured in a few regional newspapers and on a late-night radio show about unexplained phenomena. For a brief time, Oakhaven was famous. But what became of the cross? Father Michael, seeking to restore peace and unity, made a decision. After weeks of prayer and deliberation, he announced that the cross would be left exactly as it was, facing the congregation. In his Sunday sermon, he addressed the town directly. He said, "Whether you see this as a sign of protection or a call to be better, both interpretations lead us to the same place. Both ask us to look after one another. Both ask us to strengthen our community and our faith. Perhaps the meaning isn't in why it turned, but in how it makes us turn towards each other." His words had a profound effect. The tension in the village began to dissolve. People started to see that the two interpretations weren't mutually exclusive. A sign of protection could also serve as a reminder not to take that protection for granted. A warning could be a call to come together for mutual support. The cross, once a symbol of division, slowly became a symbol of a new, more thoughtful unity. The people of Oakhaven learned to live with the mystery. They accepted that some things just can't be explained. The cross hangs there still, a silent watcher over the pews, a constant reminder of the day their quiet little town was touched by the inexplicable. What do you think happened? Was it a miracle, a warning, a clever prank, or some forgotten law of physics? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Stories like this remind us that the world is still full of wonder and mystery, and sometimes the most important answers are the ones we find within ourselves and our communities. Thanks for joining me on this journey to Oakhaven. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more tales of the strange and unexplained, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. We'll see you in the next video.